Hello and welcome to God Logic. My name is Thiemo and today we are taking a look at a game called Artificial Defense. And it's basically a tower defense game coupled with a orbital shooter in a nice little techno-esque style. It is developed by Thiemo Bolder, and I'm sorry if I am butchering your name. And it is a one-man project. He initially released the game on mobile and then basically made a PC version. Is the game any good? Well, it sure as hell has mouse control in the menus, that at least it does. And other than that, it runs pretty well. So let's go ahead and dive in a little bit into the options and talk a little bit about the technical things about the game, and then I'll show you a little bit about the tower defense-esque way the game works. Now, outside of just having the tower defense-esque, there's also a progression system with upgrades and ranks, as well as a online leaderboards where you can see how well you do compared to other players. So let's go ahead and see the options. It's pretty short. The game has audio on or off with a non-indicative volume slider that is a bit buggy, so that's a bit of a shame. It has 3 difficulty modes. You can switch this on the fly for every challenge as you deem fit, and it has 3 graphical presets from very low to normal, AA on or off, and full screen on or off. It doesn't have a colorblind mode or anything of the sort. The game doesn't really need that because it's all shapes more than colors and sizes and different aesthetic stuff, but it still would have been nice to have such a addition. Also, it doesn't have full screen mirror mode, which is also a bit of a shame, and it doesn't constrain mouse to window either, so if you have 2 monitors, there is a few technical things this game is a bit lacking on. Again, it is a one-man project, so there are some allowances we make, and the game does overall perform quite well, running at a nice smooth 60 FPS at all given times, if not far above that. Also, the audio is a bit fiddly. I think it's too loud personally. I disabled the audio while playing the game, but I've turned this on for the video recordings just so you can enjoy the audio a little bit. Also, all the sound effects and stuff are pretty good overall. The difficulty curve is a bit on the steep side in my opinion. Gold genuinely requiring you to progress using the uplab and get quite a few of these upgrades for you. Now, there is a couple of things in the game. There's 2 ways to attack. You can either the orbital shooter command, which has a machine gun, a missile, and a bomb. And then there is 2 types of towers, which is close range and long range towers. And there is a production building as well. And I'll explain these when we get into the gameplay segment. And I'll show that each of these has a bunch of upgrades. And these upgrades are unlocked linearly, and they are generally speaking flat out upgrades. So there's no side grades or anything like that overall. There's a couple that you might say downgrade one just because it works better for a certain situation or a certain challenge. But overall, the further ahead to the right you go, the stronger your attacks are going to be and the stronger your abilities are going to be overall, which means that certain challenges become fundamentally easier. And the game is all about that. You do the challenges at bronze, you get a feel for it, then you unlock a few upgrades, and then you do the challenge at silver or gold based on how well you feel you're doing. And the higher you go, the higher ranked you are compared to other players, which you can compare yourself to after every match and after every challenge. It'll show you a little bit of an indication what you've done, how well you've done, and so on and so forth. If you go to the ranking system, you'll see there's bronze, there's silver, there's gold, and you can see how well people are doing and how well you've done in the progress, and so on and so forth. So there's quite a few things here that are for you to figure out where you are and also how far you've come along with the game itself based on the bronze, the silver, and the gold ranking. So other than that, it has a pretty extensive tutorial. It is pretty well in depth, even though the tutorial itself isn't that impressive. It just shows you how everything works. But because the way the control scheme works, I'm not too great with it. I had a bit of trouble, and you do have to memorize all the icons because there's no text or clearly discernible items in the game. So everything is a bit of an abstract art form. So let's go ahead and dive into the gameplay, and I'll talk a little bit about the various things the game does and doesn't do right. And also talk a bit how I feel the graphics might be the game's strongest and also its weakest side. Let's go ahead and dive into some gameplay. As you can see, the game is mostly top-down, and you control the camera position, which is also the aiming reticule, by holding down the right mouse button and moving around. You can also use the keyboard to move around as you deem fit, even though I found that quite inaccurate. Now, this is 100% made with mobile or touch controls in mind, where you only have one single input type. I have no idea why this was kept this way on the keyboard, and I've spoken to the developer and he said this is pretty much the way it goes, and I personally cannot see why you would want it this way. Just having a regular mouse control cursor without a right click to hold it down would work way better in my opinion. So that is my only real criticism about the control scheme, is that you have to hold down right mouse button and do that. Now, the game does offer quite a few options in how fast the cursor movement is, so you can tune that however you deem fit to how fast the reticule will move across the screen based on how much accuracy or how much speed you might want to have at any given time. Now there's two aspects to this game. One is obviously the orbital attack mode, which is what you're seeing on screen with me using the machine gun and the missiles and the bombs to kill these triangles on the ground. The other way is putting down towers. You switch between these using the E and R buttons on your keyboard. And there's two towers, one is long range, one is close range, and you can upgrade these towers with a variety of ways, going from a single shot, to a flamethrower, to a machine gun, to a shotgun, to a variety of different attacks and modes. And all of that is mostly linear upgrades, as I said earlier, so there's no real reason to keep an older version up. You just upgrade to whatever you have, and that will make your gameplay infinitely easier. But do note, this is being played on the bronze difficulty, which is basically easy. So if you think this is going way too well for me, keep in mind that both silver and gold are significantly harder, with a lot more enemies, a lot more speed, and way more hectic overall. Now each challenge has a few criteria you have to reach, and these differ from getting a certain amount of RAM, which is your credits, to surviving a certain number of waves, to surviving in a certain length of time, to getting certain objectives such as these triangles on the ground, which you have to use special abilities for, killing a certain number of bosses, and so on and so forth. And there's a couple of ways you can do that, going from building towers and just waiting it out, to taking over these nodes on the map. You see these little squares of blue moving across the map. These will also give me points. Taking out the blue circles, that also give you points, and so on and so forth. So there's a variety of things you have to keep track of at any given time. Keep track of various different enemies that might change direction, that might move faster, that might be impervious to your towers and you have to snipe them down using your guns. That might suddenly attack from a different direction. As you can see, suddenly I was being attacked from a different side here. That initiated a little bit later than the other method. There's a different one that will also initiate later down the line, and so on and so forth. So there's quite a few things you have to keep track of in the matches, which keeps them pretty interesting. So I have to say that once you complete a challenge, there's no real reason to go back to that challenge, because nothing will really change, and because of your upgrades, it will actually just become easier. So once you've completed all the challenges on gold, there really isn't a lot of replayability to these matches, unless you really like score attacks and compare yourselves to other players. There is a total of 7 levels, I would say, and each of them has challenges, which is pretty good. It gives you quite a bit of content. I have played for about 6 or 7 hours so far, and I've only unlocked about a third of the challenges, and I've not even done them all on gold. So there is definitely a bit of replayability, and also some challenge if you do it on the higher difficulty levels. Talking a little bit about the towers and how the game tries to incorporate this, and whether it does a good job of this or not. The game tries to balance itself by not allowing you to place towers everywhere. Towers are restricted to certain spots on the map, which means that you'll always be forced into a dual situation of using both towers and your machine guns. Your machine gun, your missiles, etc. also aren't free. Everything costs RAM. So at the core of it, this is a resource management game where you have one resource, which is your RAM, which you have to repopulate by either taking out the blue circles, by taking up these honeypots, which is these yellow hexagons on the ground, by taking over one of these center modules that generate RAM all the time. In the meantime, you just have to make sure you kill all these little enemy triangles that are spawning everywhere, and then get your challenge. For example, if 4 or 5 towers up, you have a steady supply of RAM coming in through these honeypots or through the center node modules. The game can turn a little bit boring once you're only waiting for the timer to take out. And even the faster speed progression is a upgrade you unlock playing the game. So I'm not sure what the goal is with that, because each of these upgrades does a slightly different thing and you can use them in a variety of ways. But it's weird that something as fundamental to a game as faster progression speed, EA, don't be bored waiting for things to pass, is an upgrade you have to unlock. I'm not sure I agree with that idea. Talking about the soundtrack, it does fit really well with the game. And the little bit of variety that is thrown into the game when the announcer says something like, "Holy cow, what are you doing to these poor creatures?" or something like that, is pretty damn cool. There's really nothing for me to complain about there. Also, a variety of waves and bosses do spawn, and you can see in the top how much health these bosses have, and keep track of that based on how many towers you're hitting them or how much you are doing damage to them. Now, the game does definitely have a progression, but I feel this progression is a little bit on the slow side. As I said, I've only been playing for about 7 hours and only unlocked about a third of the challenges. But even so, I've only unlocked about a tenth of the upgrades available, and I've only come across 4 or 5 enemy variety types in 2 or 3 maps. So there isn't a lot of diversification between various challenges. There's lots of diversity between various tiers of challenge and between various levels, but in challenges themselves there is not a lot of diversity outside of the objective you're trying to achieve. The map is the same, the progression is the same, and even though a few things may be different based on the challenge, the general overall idea is still the same. And this is definitely a bit of a shame, which means that the replayability of the game and the freshness of the game does turn stale quite fast. And if you're looking for a title to sink quite a few hours in, this might not be the title. It's a fun experience, definitely, and the game does a ton of things right and some things not so much, like the control scheme. But overall, it's a very casual experience. Definitely designed for mobile, for a quick match of 5-6 minutes, get a challenge, get an upgrade, have a bit of fun with gameplay, and put it away. Not something you'll sit down and play for 4, 5, 6 hours. Now, in conclusion, the game has a very interesting gameplay, but it is very simple. The progression, while interesting, is also pretty limited and pretty slow to ramp up in difficulty. The unlock system is a very linear system that requires very little thought or depth to it, but is more of a gateway to prevent you from getting a gold ranking too fast, as once you figure out a certain level, it doesn't matter what tier you're playing it on. Now overall, the presentation of the title is fantastic. Maybe it's because I am a programmer and I enjoy the motherboard aesthetic with the hard drives on the sides and the RAM as currency and stuff like that, but it does really fit together quite well. As well as the audio that is an upbeat track that keeps things pace, and the different weapons such as bombs and machine guns and turrets and stuff like that do bring quite a bit of variety in the game. Going for the price point, the game is quite fun if you enjoy the tower defense / orbital shooter type of gameplay, and within its genre and within what the game tries to do, it does a quite good job of it, but that is all that there is to it as well. The game doesn't try to do anything out of the box. Online ranking, online leaderboards are there, but they're very limited. So overall, a pretty decent experience, even though it is quite limited in what it does. If this was a mobile, or if I have a few minutes to kill waiting on a queue in a different game, then I would pick up and play a few matches. But on its own, it is a very casual experience. And if you enjoy that sort of thing, well, this might be the game for you. If you don't, well, might want to skip this one. If you want to check it out, it's over on Steam and out on June 1st, 2016. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, press that like button below. If you didn't enjoy this video, well, there's a dislike button for exactly that purpose. And leave a comment. Tell us what you liked, tell us what you didn't like, tell us what we can do better. Want to hear back from all of you. And if you want to see more content like this on the channel, just press that subscribe button below and we will deliver. So I wish you a good day, and until next time, right here on Guy Logic.